Barry in the UK. Barry, you're live with Eric and Thomas. What would you like to talk about?
Hi, Eric. Hi, Thomas. Nice to talk to you, and thanks for taking my call.
Yeah.
Great talking to you. What do you want to talk about today?
Yeah, what I'd like to talk about is basically following on from a call that V and Vice Rhino took last week, which was about how to promote critical thinking and skepticism in schools and how to equip kids for when religious ideas are presented as facts.
It is definitely different over here. But what specifically did you, maybe I missed the question.
Well, so you're saying you want to learn how to effectively promote critical thinking in schools. Is there a particular area? Is it, hey, these, kids aren't getting it in school, what can we do at home? Or is it, how can we encourage teachers to teach critical thinking? How can we get it as a part of the curriculum at like a government level, top down? Like what areas are you looking at?
Yeah, more your second point, more the sort of the top-down government curriculum-led level, I suppose. Essentially, what I wanted to say is that over here, I'm a volunteer for Humanist UK. So I've recently trained as a school speaker to go into schools at their invitation to discuss humanism as a worldview. And I was wondering whether something like that is even possible in the US. I don't know enough about the education system there, so I was hoping you could kind of let me know whether that's, even possible.
So it varies, I think, from a scale of probably to not in your life. I mean, the U.S. is just so big with so many disparate cultures that are sectioned out that there are some areas where I think that would be absolutely fine. But we're in the South. We have a dear friend who has been getting threatened regularly because they brought up the fact that their child's teacher was going on a religious rant. And it was absolutely inappropriate. The school backed them up and it got real nasty. We have a long way to go over here. I don't think we could get there right now. I think our next reasonable goal is just to be safe and secular before we can start advocating it over here.
Well, I think that there are definitely baby steps that can be made, because if you're wanting to go from, hey, this school is teaching that evolution is a lie and that the earth is 6,000 years old and they're teaching straight from the Bible a religious agenda, if you want to go straight from that to actually teaching skepticism and critical thinking and science and evolution and everything, that might be difficult. The first thing, in the US is, we've started in the courts. And we've had this court battle again and again saying, hey, look, here's why evolution is backed up by science. Here's why it's not a religion. And here's why teaching the religious perspective is violating the separation of church and state. And it is teaching religion from a tax-funded a tax-funded public school, why that's problematic and why that's not legal. And I think that once you have those battles in the courts, you're always going to have, or not always, but you're still going to have some teachers who are violating that and who are doing it and getting away with it because everyone around them isn't calling them out. But I think that there are baby steps that we can take to encourage people to think critically, both inside and outside of the classroom, and to kind of push that into the curriculum, to encourage teachers to teach logic and reason and critical thinking, even if it's not necessarily from a controversial position. Like I was taught logic and I was taught certain aspects of critical thinking, even with young earth creationist religious parents. And as I got older, I was able to use some of those ideas and reflect back in on myself and my beliefs. And it helped me to get out of and de-indoctrinate myself.
Yeah, but in the meantime, it's taking a lot of that, and it's sad. But systemically, I think that we've got a long uphill battle, and we have been fighting it. Heck, I've spoke to the Texas State Board of Education when they were trying to whitewash history a few years back. Well, let's look at it this way. Barry, you're from the UK, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. You've got this is partially your fault. you shipped your religious fundamentalist nutters out, because why would you want to do, and then they started and really kind of baked in a lot of those nutty values into what we're fighting today. So you exported them when I don't know if we can ever forgive you, Barry.
I mean, that's a strange thing, because those guys are well, maybe not those guys, more enlightened thinkers, obviously came up with the concept of codifying the separation of church and state, which we don't have over here. It's really bizarre that the UK is technically still a theocracy. We have guys, bishops, sitting in the House of Lords making laws purely because they hold a position in the church. There's only 2 countries in the world which do that, and that's Iran and here. But at the same time, we are a very secular country, and most people know that we tend to get by all right. Going back to what you said, Thomas, about court rulings. Basically, one of the big things that changed here was in 2015 there was a High Court ruling which basically concluded that teachers have a legal obligation to teach about non-religious worldviews as part of the inclusive religious studies in non-religious state schools. And that teaching has to be objective, critical, and pluralistic. So essentially, schools break the law if they don't teach non-religious counterpoints such as humanism as a valid way to approach sort of moral issues. So, yeah, maybe the US is, as you say, in some areas quite a long way off. But maybe those baby steps into that sort of thing are things like critical thinking that can be taught in a variety of ways. I first learned it in history on how to evaluate sources and first and primary and secondary sources, where there's a bias, where there's propaganda. And I used that for years in school. And it wasn't until years later I actually thought, what, that can be applied to other things. That can be applied to the religious claims. So it can be taught sort of safely without going up against religion. I think that's, probably a good place to start.
Absolutely. I wish that we could include classes in logic and give people, a stronger understanding of what a good reason looks like and what good reasoning looks like. I'm absolutely on board with you on that.
Well, I think also in addition to that, you're talking about how do we teach humanism and how do we teach, these ideas? And I think that most Christians in, Christian public or Christian schools, even in private schools, even where we don't have legal protection over the separation of church and state, where they can teach straight out of the Bible. I think even in those places, there's not so much resistance or so much of a barrier to teaching conceptually about what other religions believe. So they might talk about, hey, here's a world religions class talking about how, the Christian or the Muslims will believe that, Muhammad is their prophet, and the Hindus will believe in multiple gods and stuff. And they might look at it in the same way that we look at the Greek gods or, the Norse pantheon and stuff. And I never really faced as a believer, as an evangelical fundamentalist, even there was some objection to like actually reading the holy books because it was seen as kind of demonic. But in terms of objectively studying it as to like, what do they believe? I didn't see a whole lot of resistance to that. Maybe others have, but I think that when you teach a kid world religions and when you teach them what other people believe and why they believe it and how they got to those beliefs, there is kind of a moment that it doesn't happen for everyone, but it certainly has happened for me. And I've seen it happen to other people where you start to realize like, oh my, they also believe in miracles. They believe that, there was some eyewitness testimony that saw and wrote down these incredible things. And they believe this, that, and the other. And I may have found reasons as to why it could have happened, like, it could have been demons or something else. But I think when you see the process of how they get there and their epistemology and the holes and flaws with it, you start to realize that your religion doesn't really stand up to the same scrutiny that you're putting other religions against.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like an outsider's test of faith.
Barry, I love that you want to keep pushing for things. I wish that we can get to a point, and I hope that we can get to a point where you're up. But in the meantime, we've got a lot of work to do, and we're glad you're watching.
Well, thanks very much, and I appreciate all that you do. You know, when I've done this training to go and speak in schools as a humanist, you know, I did find the approach was a lot less AXP, and it was a lot more Talk Heathen. And I've been following you guys for a long time, so you know, I really appreciate the help that you provide us in you know, fighting for the same things here as you do over there. So thank you very much.
Appreciate it, brother. Take care.
Okay, thanks very much.
Yeah, you know, I'm just glad that he was able to find a show that he liked. You know, lots of people are like our Big Sister show, and it's just what your flavor is. And I'm glad that we were able to be that thing that he liked watching.
Fit the niche.
Yeah.